and I only found this out the other day. If I tried to do a screen record of the comic I'm reading, it actually blanks out.
I love how David tried to bootleg his own app. And that speaks to a really powerful message, because one of the things Steve Jobs always say is everything needs to be intuitive. And that also means security needs to protect against human intuitivity.
What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to Collectors Gone Digital. My name is Josh, and on today's episode, we're going to be recapping the roundtable interview that VeVe did with the creators behind the Evermind comic coming to the platform. And before we do that, there are 2 points I want to discuss. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alright, so the first point here, we just had VeVe announce that the Ubisoft announcement has to do with Assassin's Creed. So I know there was some speculation because the original ad was a little, it seemed a little different than other ads in the past. I don't know if that was just me. Their first promo showed the bow and arrow emoji, and then they actually followed it up with a second promo before announcing what the drop was. And that's when they used the sword emoji. Now, I will be doing a full video to discuss this drop, as well as some other things they've done in the past in the NFT space. And then I do also want to let you guys know that I will be streaming the game this weekend. It's going to be Assassin's Creed Origins, and that game is based in ancient Egypt. So for anyone who wants to stop by, learn more about the game, the brand, or if you know a lot about it and just want to chat, anyone and everyone is welcome. Now, my second point here, on top of the Assassin's Creed stream this weekend, I am also going to be streaming some live building. This is going to be done in Fortnite, so we can play some of the maps in other streams. But that brings me to an interesting question here, and I want to get people's opinions on this. Apparently, there's a group in the VeVe Discord that plays Fortnite, and I've come across a lot of people now who apparently play the game. So what does everybody think about the community running a little tournament for Star Wars month, where I can build a map, and then we have some sort of OMI or collectibles given out as prizes? Now, this is just an idea, nothing set in stone, but I wanted to toss the idea out there because I think that if people are interested, I think this would be a fantastic event to run in the community. But anyways, let's get on with the video. So to start off the roundtable discussion, they go around the group pretty much asking how everybody started. So when it comes to Daniel Wu, we did actually just do a video on Evermind. We talked about the co-creators as well, Daniel Wu and Sean Chen. But just in case you guys missed that, which I will have a link down below, Daniel went to school for architecture, but he said that before he even finished the degree, he actually knew he wasn't going to pursue it. Now, after he graduated, he went over to Hong Kong on a backpacking trip. This is because China was actually taking back Hong Kong at the time, and there was a ceremony that he wanted to see. During his time in Hong Kong, he was actually spotted on the street and asked to do a commercial. When that commercial got released, a director reached out to Daniel and asked him to do an interview. Now, during this interview, he was actually asked to be the lead role in the film, to which Daniel originally turned down the offer, he said about 3 or 4 times. But a week after that interview took place, he saw Jackie Chan at a party, who actually ended up signing him to his management company, and that's what sparked a 12-year relationship between the two. Now, the panel for this roundtable interview was actually quite large. We had David Yu, we had Daniel Wu, we had Sean Chen, the other co-creator of Evermind. We had Carl Choi, one of the founders of 24/7 Comics. And then we also had Swagglehaus, who you see on screen. Swagglehaus is a comic creator, as well as a member of the development team behind the comic. Now, Swagglehaus said he became a comic fan through the Tim Burton Batman movies. Tim Burton was the original creator behind the films. He's a lifelong collector, fan of genre storytelling, a writer and director for over 15 years. He actually started in music, and he's produced over 150 different music videos with various artists, he said. And then during COVID, when films were kind of slow, he started his YouTube channel to share his passion for comics. That is what eventually led him to do some work for 24/7 Comics. Now, speaking of 24/7 Comics, next up is Carl Choi. Now, Carl was born in Hong Kong and immigrated to the US when he was 8 years old. He says he's heavily dyslexic and he had a hard time learning in school, so comics made it much easier for him. He discovered them when he went into a comic book shop with a friend. He said he immediately fell in love when he took them back home and started to read them. From there, he went every single week, and when he was 13, the store actually offered him a job. He worked there for a couple years. He actually helped open another store before getting into the entertainment industry, starting with music and film, before moving into publishing, which is what he's doing now. So next up, we have Sean Chen, co-creator of Evermind. Now, Sean did end up actually dropping out of the call, so we didn't get much from him for this question. But as I did mention, we did cover him in our last episode, and we did discuss his background. 2 quick points here. He started with Valiant Comics before eventually moving over to Marvel and DC, which we will discuss more in this episode. Now, when it comes to Evermind, how was it created? Well, Carl encouraged Sean to get into writing, and so that's when they started working together on the project. Now, Carl ended up going over to Daniel and saying, hey, the main character is based on you, and he actually asked him to join the development team. So all of that was explained by Carl. Now, Sean gives a little bit of input here, and he says that as an actor, what you need to do is you kind of need to think about the whole character that you're playing as, all the way down to the character's childhood. Whereas the director, they only really care about what's happening on the screen in that moment. And so what he meant by this is that Daniel's story matched the character's story in the comic, the main character, really well. And so that only made Daniel an even better partner for the comic. Now, when it comes to 24/7 Comics, they are going to be the new publisher on VeVe, and they look for comic book IP that can be adapted into TV and films. Now, Carl explains that there's really only 2 routes to publishing. The first one is you draw, you earn your steady paycheck, but you have to work crazy timelines. The second is doing it all on your own and taking on all the risk. So before going into all this, Carl didn't know that 99% of comics struggle to generate revenue for the creators. 24/7 Comics created partnership publishing as a result. And so what this means is that all the creators in their ecosystem are stakeholders in the publishing company itself, 24/7 Comics. They all get a piece of the pie. So next up, I really like this question. They were asked, how do you balance your creativity, right? Because when you're working with a larger company, you can't be nearly as flexible as when you're independent. So Corey asks, how do you conceptualize the idea to make a cohesive story? And Sean explained this really well. So going back to the work that he did for Marvel, he said he would often second guess how the editor was thinking. That's because there would be somebody that would oversee all the projects. So he had to meet the expectations of those around him. He says that when you work alone, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And so he had to create constraints. He had to focus on a theme. He had to keep the story on a path, he says. And then he rounded things off by saying that they had to make the story manageable for 6 issues. So we now have confirmation that there's going to be 6 books. But why science fiction? Why did they choose this genre in particular? So Sean has always been a fan of the movies. Films like Blade Runner, Road Warrior, Star Wars, and Dune. He says that a lot of artists who formerly worked for Marvel often move on to science fiction or fantasy. He also says that you can say a lot about current world issues, whereas it's harder to do that with superhero stories. And then lastly, he also likes the potential for the author's POV to be expressed through the comic. Now, how did David meet Carl? Well, they were connected through a mutual friend. Now, what's funny is apparently on the first call they met, they just started flexing different collectibles to each other. So that gave David a pretty good idea that Carl was a collector himself. And not long after, Carl ended up sending David a PDF of Evermind. From there, the path was set. Now, we mentioned this question was going to keep coming up, and of course, here it is again. Will digitals surpass physicals? And we got answers from multiple people on this one. Starting off with Daniel, he brings up a very good example. He talks about how you take many photos on your phone that you never look at, but you can always see the painting hanging on your wall. So he thinks the digital side will become more popular, but physicals will never go away. And that is the common answer you're going to hear, and that we have been hearing. Now, David says that the digital side is a new method of distribution. It's also a great way for artists to test the market. So releasing a digital version before they actually go to physical print. Now with VeVe Comics, they've also fixed the copyright issue. And David actually figured this out in quite a funny way. He went onto the platform, tried taking a screenshot of one of the comics he was reading just to share it with a friend. The screenshot came back blank. So the panel got a pretty good laugh with that one. Carl adds some points talking about how digitals can allow for more transparency with edition sizes. This was interesting. So when it comes to physicals, he says that there could be a pallet of a certain comic just sitting somewhere in a warehouse. The total amount that have actually been printed is unknown. So when it comes to digital, the edition sizes are clearly stated. You know exactly how many have been minted, and because of that, it's going to help determine true value. He says that this isn't something that physical collectors are used to, but he believes it's going to be normalized over time. Now, I want to wrap the video up with something interesting here, because I haven't seen anyone talk about it on X yet. I don't know if I'm just misunderstanding what he said, but at the very, very end, and I'm talking about right as it cuts out, David talks about how in this comic, there's an app. I believe that's what he said. So just in case I am hearing him wrong, I'm going to play the video for context. And if I'm wrong, please correct me down below. But an app inside the comic, that could be anything. So check this out.
Hi fans, you have heard from the talents behind this amazing comic. If you missed out your Kickstarter, this is your chance to grab it on VeVe. And just keep in mind there is an app inside the comic. So that's amazing. Looking forward to hear your feedback once you read this.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. That's a little recap of the roundtable interview that VeVe did with the creators of Evermind, as well as 24/7 Comics. Now, as mentioned at the start, I am going to be doing a full video on this Assassin's Creed announcement, as well as their involvement in the Web3 space already. In fact, they have actually already dropped NFTs with the Assassin's Creed title. So for those who do want to learn more about that, make sure to tune in on Thursday. But if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. As for our next, I'll catch you then.